him first. Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats for the evening's event. Take your seats, please, and we'll get started. Everybody ready? We're getting there, little by little. Last few people to sit down, and we'll get started. Excellent, excellent. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Alistair Ross. I'm delighted to welcome you all to tonight's event, this gala dinner, where we'll be focusing on technology and innovation in 2022 and beyond. It's a fabulous, fascinating topic, and we've got super speakers, and we'll be followed afterwards by our award ceremony. So it's going to be a full and interesting evening, I hope, with a good meal as well. Rather somber circumstances, perhaps. We live in very somber times, and I didn't want to let the evening begin without perhaps touching on the situation the world is in, within the context of the topic that we're talking about tonight. I'm a forecaster, and The Economist is a forecasting publication, an organization. And forecasting is about taking the things you know and projecting them into the future. It's precarious, not easy at the best of times. We occasionally get things wrong. It's been known to happen. But particularly difficult when you find out that something you thought you knew turns out to be wrong. It turns out that what we thought we knew about Vladimir Putin was wrong. Specifically, his willingness to go to war over the grievance he's constructed regarding Russia's diminished territory and status since the collapse of the Soviet Union. By taking the action he's taken, Mr. Putin has forced a sudden and fundamental realignment in global assumptions. And this change will reverberate around everything we do for years to come. Europeans are flooding Ukraine with aid and weapons, and the Western powers and their allies around the world are tightening a noose of sanctions around the neck of the Putin regime. Where will things go from here? We don't know, of course, but in thinking through the scenarios ahead, there are timeframes that we should consider, and there are questions that we should ask. First, the timeframes. In the short term, Mr. Putin has the upper hand. Ukraine, outside NATO, is far weaker than its invader and will lose control of territory and infrastructure progressively as the days and weeks progress. In the longer term, the slow suffocation by the West's sanctions will change daily life in Russia for rich and poor and weaken that state's capacity for action. The questions we should ask: what does Putin want? The Donbass, a dummy government in Kiev, direct control of Ukraine, of its ports, and of Crimea, a land corridor between the Donbass and Crimea, or a greater Russia, including the Baltics perhaps, and more. We don't know. But these are the questions we must ask, and in light of what we've discovered, we must ask them urgently. Another question: what is the rest of the world willing to sacrifice? And how hard can it hit the Putin regime, and for how long? The sanctions that we put in place can be tightened. Will they be, and will they be held in place for long enough to make a difference? Will Putin's circle rebel and oust him? And what would come next? As a new Cold War freezes Russia's relations with the West, will it find a warmer welcome in the bosom of its neighbour to the east? And how will this change the shifting alignment of global influence between the West and China? So all the things we thought we had a handle on, we have to rethink. This is where to look. These are the questions to ask, and these are the time frames to consider. But I have scant answers as we meet today. Instead, like you, I'm watching warily as the situation develops. What we see is an oddly old-fashioned conflict: tanks in the mud, air raid sirens, soldiers on the ground with muddy boots. But there's another battlefield that is less obvious, but equally contested. Information has always been key in conflict, but the emergence of digital technology in this field, as in every other, has transformed the possible, in good ways and in bad. So let's turn to our topic for the evening: technology and innovation in 2022 and beyond. Perhaps not quite the framing we would have given this topic 10 days ago, but I think it would be wrong to ignore what's happening around us. Well, I'm honoured and delighted to be joined for this session by two eminent and knowledgeable people. So let me welcome up onto the stage my guests: Kyriakos Pierakakis, who's the Minister of Digital Governance in Greece, and Mikhail Bletsas, who's Research Scientist and Director of Computing at the MIT Media Lab. Now, normally it would be the Minister who stepped up first, but he has suggested, I think wisely, that we hand across first to Mr. Bletsas to give us his introductory words and to tell us about the broad picture that we face. And then afterwards, the Minister will come and give a more local, more specific perspective. Thank you very much. Mr. Bletsas, can I invite you up, please? Thank you.
Ευχαριστώ πολύ.
Thank you very much. It's quite weird sentiment, being physically present in an event like that, addressing the knowledge. I experienced that in the preliminary versions of Metaverse through our screens. It helped us continue with our lives because we actually forgot about the pandemic because of the developments over the past days. But anyway, let us hope that we will quickly come back to some sort of normality. If I were to give a title to this event, to my speech, I was considering, because it turns out that geopolitics is far more important than digital disruption, as the speaker says. When one is able to dismantle a network, a digital network via a bomb, you don't have to look elsewhere in order to find ways to do that online. That's why we're not here to discuss about cybersecurity. I believe that cybersecurity will be a topic of discussion after the conflicts are over, and Russia has a very strong tradition on that. And I think it won't be in our radar for some time, especially if Putin finds himself cornered after the latest developments. My comments. The springboard for my comments have to do with the questions I get from Greece lately. Questions on some keywords in the field of technology. Many people asked me, what do you have to say about metaverse? I have a hard time because I'm an engineer by profession. I'm not a marketing expert. I do know and I respect that marketeers have the upper hand and they win the battle in the end because they are the ones who pay the price, the bills, and they have to pay our people. But, you know, the whole thing about metaverse started with something that had no technological background. It started when Mark was cornered, when Facebook got cornered. This was the outcome of the negative publicity they received because of what Apple did to them. Quite recently, Apple hurt Facebook much more than all other comments in the past years have done as a result of a minor change. In the latest in the latest version of their iOS platform for mobile devices, they changed the password. If an application may ask for a monitoring password, it's called a unique ID that every application has, which every device has, that facilitates marketeers, which allows them to have access to other applications, so they can monitor the entire activity of a user. So they changed a bit, something, a very small thing. From now on, these applications may ask for the password, and that was always on. You could turn it off if you like. Now Apple changed that. Now this feature, this functionality, is subject to the consent of the user in order for the application to retrieve the password and monitor the activities. As a result, 10 billion euros lost for Facebook. As a result, Facebook cannot monitor your activity with the same degree of detail as it used to. I'm not going to shed a tear for Facebook, of course, or for Mark. This year, Facebook had 39 billion euros of profits, if I'm not mistaken. But what we see is that back in Silicon Valley and in Wall Street as well, which follow, firstly, the growth of the revenue streams and the profits, this had a huge impact on them. And despite the publicity Facebook earned as a result of transforming into Meta, and as a result changing its activities with the Meta virtual reality, in which we will be able to wear the Facebook and Oculus built headsets. So we will be in a beautiful room with our library, in a cartoon-like depiction, which will somehow turn our collaboration with others much more easier. I don't know if you have ever used a VR headset built by Oculus, but it's a very bad experience. For the time being, it makes you dizzy, especially if you have a certain age or above. Anyway, that announcement turned the entire Silicon Valley into an area that Metaverse was the talk of the town. Metaverse has been here already. There are three main applications of it. One, remote attendance in events as a result of the pandemic. It helped a lot. B, The second application had to do with entertainment. We have virtual worlds being developed in order to be used for games. The cost is huge. And the last application, the most important one for humanity, is the simulation functionality it offers. This gives me an assist, the relay, in order to comment something else, going down from hyperbole to reality. Reality has to do with AI, and simulation is very, very important for AI purposes. We've reached a point in which algorithms, neural networks have evolved, and the progress of AI is now relying on the quality of data. So far, we knew that we had to talk about the so-called big data. Now, without the importance of big data being diminished, we know that big data is useful only to specific organizations that can collect them. Machine learning can help in many, many ways where not that big data are necessary. What we need are the correct data. For instance, a model developed by MIT Media Lab, no, not the Media Lab, the computing lab of MIT, not ours. So they aggregated statistics from medical files coming from 2 or 3 Boston-based hospitals. They were able to build a machine learning model which, quite successfully, was able to recommend a cure, to recommend, after checking, let's say, the X-ray, the breast X-ray, or the mammography, I apologize, when the patient was supposed to come back for a follow-up. That was a very important thing because it drops costs, health-related costs, without jeopardizing the health of a patient, which is the case as the result of the universal recommendation. Mammography every 2 years, because it has been proven statistically that if you get an X-ray every year, that might create more problems and might generate more cases of cancer compared to the ones that might be identified, apart from the mental stress that it might create as a result of a poor diagnosis. So, if we are able to enter the realms of simulation of high precision, then we can solve problems like the ones of autonomous cars, self-driving cars. We cannot build systems able to distinguish between marginal cases that might lead to a car accident because we have no photos, no videos of such cases. It's very rare. But we can recreate such cases in a simulation, in an environment of simulation. That's why the announcement of NVIDIA, the chip maker, on Omniverse some months ago, before Zuckerberg on Meta, was quite more important, I think, and that's why this announcement will mean many important developments, which means that we are walking towards a future in which we will be able to predict our future more precisely, more accurately, by simulating a system at a very high degree of precision, which was not the case until now. And we are walking towards a future in which AI will be trained using real data, not just big data, and artificial data. The second keyword that's going around is the Web 3.0. We're done with Web 2.0, what we actually experienced. We're entering the era of Web 3.0. This is a marketing-driven necessity, mostly related with Silicon Valley, because Silicon Valley always looking for the next big thing, as the speaker says. And it seems that for many, the next big thing is crypto and blockchain. The blockchain is a very neat, a very delicate solution that's looking for the real problem. the kind of aversion that people start experiencing towards these huge central systems where information is being aggregated and owned by tech giants like Facebook, like Google, etc., has, let's say, triggered a debate on a distributed network, a distributed internet in which no one will have full control of all data. That's something that it's being discussed, but in practical terms, it's quite difficult to deliver. But it's a better sounding marketing term compared to crypto coins or cryptocurrency, where many fraudsters may be found as well. But if we call it Web 3.0, distributed networks, it's great. There are many applications about that. It's not just about cryptocurrencies. Of course, there are cryptocurrencies or there are applications dealing with ownership, but there is no killer app yet for blockchain, for the blockchain technology. So we have so many venture capitalists in Silicon Valley who have decided to pour money on that. This means something big is coming. This also binds with the sanctions imposed on Russia as we speak. Because one might think, if you come to think about it, the SWIFT system is the ideal application for a blockchain involving many, many banking systems. We don't need the SWIFT. The speaker means the blockchain. You can build a blockchain-based system where such trustworthiness and reliability may exist. So I think that developments in this regard will be accelerated as a result of what we are experiencing right now in Ukraine and because of the constraints imposed. I think that we are all moving towards a world in which everybody will be trying to break the chains of interdependence. And whenever there are intermediaries, then technology might come to the rescue and take this, not very easily, but it may help take these intermediaries out of the way. So I think in this field there will be certain developments. Cybersecurity. We will discuss about that after the next year. So that's the general picture, the way I perceive it. By the way, given that we discussed about exaggerations and hyperbole, it seems that quantum mechanics and quantum computing are coming closer to reality, but they don't have the kind of impact or repercussions people expect in the past. Originally, they were supposed to be used for breaking to break passwords and crypto applications, but for the time being, they are being used mainly for health-related purposes. So these developments are based on this specific technology as it speeds up. So I think now it's time to give the floor to my friend Kyriakos to talk about practical terms that torment your daily lives. And he's the ideal person. I think he has done many great things in making our lives easier.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, allow me first of all to start with certain assumptions. The first was mentioned by Mr. Ross. This meeting is in the shadow of the events, and as the Prime Minister has already said in the Council of Ministers, we had a national stance against revisionism and against the dictatorship and our support to our expatriates. Greece is in the east of Europe, but in the center of West. So I will come back to that. The second assumption is personal. don't overwhelmed by the views of Mr. Blechas. When I was 22 back in Boston, Mr. Blechas was already famous in the MIT, and everybody appreciated his wits. And allow me to say that the framework of new technologies was that, and technologies should be tackled like that, that the future is something that you plan, not that you undertake.
Αξίες οι οποίες αντανακλώνουν
Apologize, there was a minor issue with the translation console. But as an IT guy, Mr. Piharakakis continues, we have also to think about values and principles that reflect on minor choices we make, like the ones Michalis mentioned. A minor change by Apple had a huge blow on Facebook's capitalization. And in order to go back to what I said before about belonging to the West, Greece, which belongs to many organizations, defense-wise to NATO, and politically and financially to the European Union and the Eurozone. By being part in the European institutions, talking about technology, we now have a role in a regulatory superpower, which is the European Union. Think about what GDPR had done on technological developments in general. It suffices to think what we have currently in the Parliament. I'm talking about three major bills we're talking about. Adonis, my good friend, is here. We're talking about the Digital Services and the Digital Market Act. These two bills are under his auspices and supervision, and we have to respond to that. The same about the regulation on AI. So all these things together in aggregate might seem to be very technical, and I'm pretty sure you are experts. And maybe you heard what Michali said before and you thought, okay, this is Sky-Fi for us. So, no, I'm asking you to do the mental experiment. Imagine, think about the penetration of internet back in the 1990s. Remember films, people ordering food through their TV. Okay, think of the things we can do right now, because things that belonged to scientific fiction in the past, currently they represent nothing but a mundane daily routine. The same will happen with the things that Michalis mentioned, and these things will happen quite sooner than expected. Think about industrial revolutions. Steam, coal, steam, electricity, digital convergence, apologize. Think about how the convergence of all these technologies, what they mean today. Imagine just one technology, AI on autonomous cars. Imagine what this will mean to the world, the new jobs that will be created, the jobs that will be changed. Schumpeter described that as creative distraction, and this is the driver of economy. He disagreed with traditional finances on demand curve, about the balance of the market. And he used to say that the market is an ongoing imbalance. And what creates this imbalance is technological change and transformation. We're not talking about faster carriages, we're talking about cars. The same will happen today.
And it is happening without understanding it fully. How many video clubs were there around us some years ago, and how many are there now? And other jobs, how Netflix and other platforms have changed the balance. Remember that thing will start accelerating. That is why we're talking about life expectancy, 100 years old. Then we will change what we have known until now, that study, find a job, and be retired. Now we have lifelong learning, and we need to be accustomed to that. Mr. Bletzers talked to you about metaverse. I will talk to you about social security, but this is the reality. If you see what we have suggested in the RRF, we have a duality. On the one hand, we try to close with pending issue or issues of the past. Why don't we have pensions issued right away? Because we have an obsolete system and because we had various social security systems. Now we want to change paper into information. 700 million of the RRF is paper to information, and then microsatellites, 5G corridors for autonomous driving or lanes, and other things. In this sense, this dual objective should be serviced in order not to miss the train, and we will do that. And in that sense, we have all these discussions about AI mentioned by Michalis earlier. And on the one hand, we have to link the registries and create big databases that can talk among them. And on the other hand, to see how we can introduce these technologies in the equation to improve our lives. And this is our commitment. And I would like to close with this thought. I mentioned that earlier in the Parliament when we had a discussion with Mrs. Vestager, and the discussion has to do with values. Europe is based on its values. If you see how different countries tackled COVID-19, you will see different values. The way Greece belongs to the EU actually determined how we took advantage of technology. We wanted not surveillance, but we wanted to empower the citizens. That happened elsewhere, and the strategy of the Prime Minister, which was to take all public services and offer them quite easily to citizens. At the beginning, we had only 8 or 10 digital services in the public sector. Now we have 1,300. And you see how this exponential change has already started and will go on. We have the tools and, of course, the will to free the talent of Greek engineers. And I think that actually Michalis has experienced this talent, and we want to free this talent and continue with big changes. For us, the lesson learned in the past 2.5 years is that Greece is a country that can make a lot of reforms. If we believe in reforms, we can make reforms. That is what we're going to do. Thank you all very much.
Thanks very much. Thank you, Minister, and thank you, Michalis. Michalis, okay. Just forget my Greek pronunciation. It's as bad as my Greek is, so I do my best. I'm very pleased that we have such a great panel, not just to experts, but such a broad range, because one of the things that fascinates me in the world in general is that there are two ways of looking at things. One is what could be, and the other is what can be. You know, there's this saying in politics that politics is the art of the possible. And of course, for Michalis, your job is beyond that. So you're looking at all of the things that could happen and that we'd love to see happen, but somebody somewhere has to make them happen, and that's you. And that's a very different job. So I want to take advantage of that broad coverage with some questions. I have plenty. It may be that you have one or two as well, and if you do, I'm very happy to cede the floor to you. So if you do have a question you want to put to either or both of our panelists, just let me know with a hand up, and I'll hand over to you. But in the meantime, let me just get into the nitty-gritty and ask a first maybe obvious question here. You talked about the way that the conflict in Ukraine is potentially changing the things that technology can be used for. Let's take a step back. We've just been through this 2-year pandemic. Greece was hit very hard when the time came. The whole world has been hit hard, and we've all responded partly by reaching for technology. So how has that interaction happened in Greece? How has technology helped Greece through the pandemic, and how has Greece leaned on technology through the pandemic?
Well, in reality, we had a pre-existing strategy, and the strategy was to simplify processes of the state and make the interaction between the state and the citizen leaner, faster, and better. So in this regard, when the pandemic struck, what we did through the lens that I mentioned before, in this duality of potential approaches between, let's say, empowerment and surveillance, what we did was to follow up upon a strategy of empowerment. And in this regard, we took a pre-existing strategy of simplifying processes, and we rendered it a tool to battle the virus. So we knew that as we're digitizing services and as we're ensuring government continuity, businesses had to ensure business continuity. We also knew that we were eliminating potential interactions, and we were thus enabling a tool to battle the virus. So in this regard, we started by digitizing services and eliminating the need for citizens to visit physically our public services. And we followed a very classical rule, the Pareto rule. 20% of one thing can be 80% of another thing. So we had a sense of volume of the services that are being provided by the citizen service centers of Greece, what we call KEP, and we took the most frequently used services and we started transitioning them to the government portal. And this is what explains effectively this exponential leap vis-a-vis the number of services used from 8.8 million services, let's say from 8.8 million transactions, we transitioned to 567 million transactions. COVID increased the demand. But the key parameter of this exponential leap is the change of supply, the fact that we changed the volume of services that we provide. And this is why this strategy so far has been perceived as extremely, I would say, popular. It's a non-partisan strategy. Everybody is against excess bureaucracy in reality. This, regardless of you being left, right, or center with the old political geography, you are against having to visit 15 or 20 different state services. So in this regard, this is something which we plan to continue, and we consider it a national goal.
Right. I should warn you, by the way, as a user of the greatly simplified virtual government processes here and in the UK, it takes me about 1/100th of the time to do a process now, as it did 5 years ago, but I still hate it. So every extra 10 seconds gets on my nerves. So just, never expect to be thanked. That's not going to happen. Let me turn to Michalis. Broadening the same question, but looking at it more broadly, and perhaps putting it in another way. If COVID hadn't hit, where would we be now in the development of digital services? Not just government, but government to government and government to consumer, but in retail, in commerce, in everything else?
Way, way behind.
That's my impression.
We would have been way, way behind. The reason why Kyriakos was able to apply the Pareto rule was that during COVID, there was no other way to deliver services. So this exceptional Greek exceptionalism, which is essentially a facade for people who don't want anything to change because, our economy is a rent-based economy. Everybody's drawing rents. Or we have lots of people who are drawing rents. And when you are taking intermediaries out, everywhere, in the public or private sector, you are hurting people. So we said, unless you make it perfect, you can do it. And how are you going to do a platform to give a digital vaccination certificate if people who got vaccinated in another country cannot use that platform? I told Kyriakos a few times, maybe during our first meetings, that, my motto was always, it's better to ask for forgiveness than for permission. If you believe into what you are doing, go and do it. And this is what happens. Like I said, tongue-in-cheek once before that, you know, COVID was a very good under-minister for him. Without COVID, he wouldn't be able to move that fast. And now that people have seen, and society has seen the benefits, I think that we will be able to keep the pace, and I hope that we will be able to keep the pace because we have lots of things to do in Greece. Big, big projects that will take many, many years to happen.
Right. I hesitate to be rude about my own country, but your dictum of seek forgiveness, not permission, Boris Johnson has moved that on a bit. So he doesn't seek either.
Lots of people have moved that. I mean, I hate to say that, because the corollary of that, it says maybe I'm a fan of Mark Zuckerberg, which I'm not, whose motto was move fast and break things.
Yeah.
No. My motto is move fast because do something that can help 80% of the people. Now, if my 81-year-old mother, who is scared of anything that has more than 3 buttons, cannot use the services, so be it. I will go and do it for her. Or my brother will do it for her, or I will go to my father's computer remotely from Boston and do it. And that's what we did. That's not a reason not to deploy the service. Just because the service is not, you know, the best service ever deployed as far as functionality or how it looks, that's not a reason not to deploy it, because you are competing against 0. You know, everything above 0 is an infinite improvement. From there up, yes, it becomes more difficult. But you should really take those steps because we were way behind, and now we are catching up. You should have seen what I went through in order to book my vaccine appointment in the state of Massachusetts. I'm not comparing. If you are doing comparisons, you have to do the comparison state by state if you were to compare Europe with the US. So I live in one of the most advanced states in the US. I had to wake up at 5 in the morning, stretch the truth, and book an appointment an hour and a half away by car. Because the way they did it was everybody who had vaccines at 3 a.m. every day will announce that, you know, pharmacy so-and-so has vaccines there. And you had to go to every site of every big pharmacy chain to figure out where there were vaccines and to book the appointment. I mean, it was ridiculous. Priorities? Forget about it. I mean, my kids got vaccinated before me because, you know, they worked for 3 hours every weekend on the ice cream store, and they qualified as essential workers.
No question.
So,
no question.
You know, our system was state-of-the-art. It was a state-of-the-art system. So we don't have to wait, and certain things can be done, and we don't have to leapfrog. We can leapfrog, sorry. But I definitely do not advocate what Boris Johnson is doing or what Mark Zuckerberg is doing. Let me absolutely clear about them. They are both buffoons of monumental. They have broken a lot of things, let's put it this way. You have to think what you are doing. But, you know, thankfully, if you are well prepared, and I will say that now, you are taking my thunder from later, that I was keeping for later, but I honestly believe that Kyriakos was one of the most well-prepared public officials ever to assume office for what he was called to do. And that helps. If you have thought about what you are trying to do, you are not breaking things. If you are impulsive, or you have a singular focus, or you have mild Asperger's, like Mark Zuckerberg does, you break things because you don't see the big picture. You need to be able to see the big picture too.
I'm going to take it as read that you agree with that. Probably almost all of it. Perhaps there's a job waiting for you in Massachusetts.
Hopefully not.
One of the things that's interesting is one of the things that fascinates me about this process that we've observed of the public, this interaction between public sector and private sector, the virtual interaction not really happening and then suddenly happening when COVID came along, is part of it is the public put aside a question of trust, I think. So I think early on before COVID hit, one of the difficulties that governments had and virtual suppliers of services in general was that public didn't want to share their details. They were a bit suspicious about why they were being asked all of these questions, and maybe that made it harder there was a barrier there to get across. Suddenly COVID comes along and people have bigger worries. And maybe that helped to ease people's minds, settle people's minds, and allow us to move forward a bit more quickly. You look doubtful, so I'm not even going to pose that as a question, because you'll just shoot me down. So let's move on. This is a question that sort of falls between the two of you, I think. You mentioned the importance to artificial intelligence of data. So artificial intelligence sucks in data, it processes it in huge amounts, and then spits out answers that maybe a human never would have seen. But of course, it all depends on the data. So this is a sort of, I don't quite know how to phrase this, but we're in a period in the world where we're balanced between greater globalization, greater sharing, greater integration, and more fragmentation, balkanization of systems and regulation and jurisdictions. How do you see that going, and how important is that for the development of AI? Are we heading towards an open data, open world, or have we peaked and are we going backwards in terms of the quality and quantities of data available for artificial intelligence?
No, we haven't peaked. The largest application and the most important when it comes to money application of artificial intelligence are the neural networks that pick what advertisements you see when you are searching in Google, or what posts, how you see the order that you see the posts on your Facebook feed. They are not, very, overall, I wouldn't say that they are very useful to society. They are very useful to a small percentage of people and to the large shareholders of those companies, but not to the rest of the society. But they are relying on the largest amount of behavioral data ever collected. And for a very long time in the beginning, in the universities, we were very worried that you would not be able to do serious artificial intelligence work unless you were working for those companies. Those companies did some really good things, by the way. They did hire, the best minds. It's very hard to hire an artificial intelligence and machine learning professor these days, because if somebody is very good, they grab them with multiples of salaries. But it turns out that it's more important to have the right kind of data than actually these huge volumes. And yes, there is work like foundational work. Some of you might have heard the acronym GPT-3, which is a very large text generation neural network. 175 billion parameters. Huge, huge, huge. You give it a short snippet of text, and it can write a whole essay. You give it a short snippet of code, it can write code, correct code. Because code is also a form of exception, language, and a structured language. Mm-hmm. So for work like that, maybe we can do the same thing for video. That will require much, much higher computation capabilities than we have right now. But for all the real applications that are going to affect our life, we don't need that kind of volume of data, but we need to have that data available. There are also mechanisms now. One of the large areas, or the important areas of research, I should say, is something called federated learning. So how do you create a very large data set from disparate sources by only using the information that's important to the specific problem that you are going to solve. So we are working towards solutions there, but we definitely haven't seen, we are just at the starting phase, I think, of the usefulness of these algorithms. And, you know, it's very simple to see that. We generate more and more and more data. And most of this data, if you think about them from a mathematical perspective, they are multidimensional vectors. Human mind is only able to pick patterns in 3 dimensions. That's about it. We stop at 3 dimensions. When you have multiple dimensions, you need the help of computers. And I think we have a long way.
Can you, because I've come across this before, and of course, mathematics and physics work in multiple dimensions, not just our 3. But as a human, allegedly, I find it quite difficult to get my head around what that actually means in terms of artificial intelligence. What you're talking about. What does it mean to work in more than 3 dimensions?
You are looking for spheres in this room. This is a 3-dimensional room in this space and time. Nothing moves too much in this moment in time, sorry. You can pick spheres. If we were in a higher dimension, if we had things moving, you would have, like if we had time, you would have slightly bigger difficulty. If we go to another dimension, says we have to look at spheres in this room and the other room and the other room and the other room, you won't be able to do it. You will only be able to see in this room. Expand that to multiple dimensions. We are not very good at picking things up. Computers don't care.
Yeah.
They are looking at it as a problem of statistics, computational statistics. They solve it. So I think this is my pet peeve with artificial intelligence. It's the wrong term, because machine learning is moving us away from the original goals of artificial intelligence. It does things very, very well, but it doesn't help us understand how our mind works, which was the original goal.
Right.
It's extended intelligence. It's the next step in information processing. The first one happened with digital computing in the 40s and the 50s. We are through the second revolution, where we finally have computers where we don't have to explicitly tell them what to do. We just train them with examples. And we say, OK, can you do the same?
Right.
And that's so, but it has absolutely nothing with the way we think.
Right, right. Thank you. We've strayed a little bit into the could. I want to come back to the can. You talked about the importance of open data and getting the right data. From a national perspective, from a Greek perspective, is that an issue that is in your sights? So that how people are making data available, how that data is being used?
A couple of comments on what you previously discussed. I fully adhere to Michalis' motto. It's better to ask for forgiveness than for permission. Why do I fully adhere? Because this motto is context related. It's not a generic motto. The context in countries like Greece, or even in countries like France, I would say. I mean, if you look at the literature of reforms in France, there was a phenomenal book a couple of years back before the election of President Macron called La République bloquée, the blocked republic, a republic that doesn't reform itself. So in this regard, we needed to unblock things. And where I will deviate from Michalis' narrative a little bit on how we did certain things, certain process simplifications and digitizations, would be vis-a-vis the fact that most, let's say, of the difficulties that we faced were not interest-based. They were cultural, meaning that people were quite used within the public sector of doing things a certain way, and the most difficult parameter was to actually explain off that it's possible to do it in a different manner by rewiring the system. So yes, of course, COVID was the key catalyst on certain types of changes, but in reality, it was, let's say, a sufficient condition. The necessary condition was to know what you want to do and be quite persistent vis-a-vis what you explicitly are trying to do. Now, with regards to data, obviously Michalis is the expert on this. But if I may make a movie analogy, I don't know how many of you have seen the movie Karate Kid. It was one of my favorite movies.
I'm trying to forget it.
Yes, when I was young. Part of the reason was that I was quite bad at karate. But having said this, it has an interesting lesson. The interesting lesson was that when the leading actor, Daniel, I think was his name, was trying to learn karate, his teacher, Mr. Miyagi, was trying to teach him how to clean and wipe off a car. The lesson here was that certain things that might look non-relevant, boring, etc., might be the necessary ingredient of what you're trying to achieve. The analogy here, more or less successful, is that data interoperability and connecting data sets is the necessary ingredient for AI as well. You need to create big chunks of data. And what we're trying to achieve in this regard through this process of simplifying, eliminating excess processes, etc., is interoperability. Interoperability means that one data set speaks with the other data set. So in reality, you don't have to visit 15 different public services. You do certain things automatically. It's the principle of what software architectures call once only. You give your data to the state once only, and then you give for permission for access to your data for a specific type of life event. So in this regard, this is what we're trying to do, and this is what the European Union is trying to do. And the COVID certificate, which, by the way, was an outcome of Greece's digital vaccination system to a very large extent. It was a proposal of our Prime Minister, Kyriakos Mitsotakis, to the European Commission that we can use this data, this digital COVID certificate, for other purposes as well. But what enabled the proposal was the fact that Greece had a system which was digital A to Z, and many other countries didn't. Massachusetts didn't, which comes as a shock, right? I mean, who would expect that Massachusetts would have a system for vaccination that wouldn't work, Massachusetts being the home state of MIT, and Greece would have a state-of-the-art vaccination system. I mean, if we said it in a forum 3 years back, it would sound weird, but it's reality. So in this regard, this COVID certificate was the largest EU-based interoperability project in reality, because we connected the various vaccination systems to a central hub which enabled us to have an EU-wide COVID certificate. So we should do that thing for all other purposes. Not only should we digitize our national pension fund, but we should connect all pension funds of the European Union together so that we can have interoperability of pension history. This is one example. Those are the obvious examples. And then you need to transition to the next step, which is what Michalis is advocating. But if I were to say it schematically, in order to have AI, you first need to have I. So you first need to connect the various systems and render them intelligent. And this is what we're explicitly trying to do right now, but with a feeling that it's the necessary ingredient to jumpstart the process.
Great. Thank you very much indeed. I have another question. You're all very quiet. I take that to mean that you're fascinated by everything you're hearing rather than that you don't have any questions. But I do have questions, so I'm gonna soldier on. Somebody will tell me if I'm running out of time. But I'm not going to look up for the moment in case that's what they're telling me, because I do have a question I want to put. And this is another one. It's probably more in your wheelhouse, Michalis, but I'm interested to hear your take too. I could just say one word, ethics, but let me put a bit of a wrapper around it. So we've talked about, you've talked about in terms of artificial intelligence, let's call it that for the sake of argument, working in dimensions that humans are not good at perceiving, coming to conclusions that even after the fact, it may be a struggle for us to understand. So how was that decision made? What was the path that machine took to come to that decision? Even that may be hard for us to understand sometimes, and that is going to be more the case. So how do we regulate for machines that can do things that we can't? I don't want to go all Terminator on you, but this is a speaking of movies, terrible movies. That's another one. But I'm fascinated by this, that we've regulated and legislated for human activity. How do we legislate and regulate for the activity of machines whose actions we can't necessarily understand?
Two principles. One is that if you want to regulate AI today, you regulate access to data. Second principle, you keep a human in the loop. Because we provide those higher, if you want, symbolic thought processes that allow us to have ethics. Even the most advanced AI systems today have no idea or no concept of ethics. So, that's the nice thing. We are not becoming obsolete. We are actually becoming more necessary. Right. It's just that we need a different skill set. So keep humans in the loop. The nice thing about artificial intelligence, it's not so nice. When it fails spectacularly.
That's nice.
So it's pretty easy to pick up. The idea that we are going to, and yes, there is a lot of work in explainability, in making those models. We don't call them exactly algorithms because they don't work with specific steps. A lot of people are trying to figure out ways to instrument them so that when they fail, you get a warning flag. And there are simple ways, and there are a lot more complex ways, but it's an active. This is not, though, something completely new. We always relied on complex systems whose complexity makes them exhibit, if you want, emergent behaviors, at least to us. And we are okay with that, in general. So we sort of have learned to relax a little bit, but that shouldn't act as a drag. I mean, we have to keep humans in the decision loop. We shouldn't let, and now in the situation that we are right now, everybody's talking about drones and AI systems in warfare. That's a very slippery slope. I don't think we will avoid it, but we have to fight it, nevertheless.
Okay, that's a whole can of worms that you just opened, and we don't have time for
But
it. So.
I will give you where we will fail.
Okay.
I will tell you where we will fail, but when we have war, we are failing anyway.
Yeah.
As a society, so as a global society. So we can leave that outside because it happens already. But we shouldn't fail in peace.
Right. Okay, we're definitely running out of time, but I want to turn back to you for a final word. On this question, we've talked about the possibilities of ethics, how things might work, but you have to make them work on a day-to-day basis. So how does this feed into your role, and what are you doing about it?
The only real answer here is purely tautological. You do it by doing it. So I would say that the only way to deliver upon such projects is preparation. Good teams of people who are highly committed, interdisciplinary teams, and effectively leveraging all the various capabilities that you have on the ground. In reality, you need to do two things. The first one is look at the horizon, the regulatory infrastructure of the EU, the potential projects that one can learn from other places. And then you look at the field. You look at what works in your case, what doesn't work, and where you can actually better deploy your people. So in reality, at the end of the day, it's all a matter of a plan with a full understanding, of course, that it's the Macmillan quote, events, dear boy, events, right? Events will change the plan. But if you have it, you know what to do.
Excellent. Well, speaking of events, this one has come to the end of this particular session. Please join me in thanking there's a question over there. You've left it to the very, very last second, but let's have it. A very short question, please. Make sure it's a question, and there's a mic there for you.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Kostis Voyagis. I have a question to both gentlemen. For the sake of our hosts, allow me to talk in English. Mr. Minister, you mentioned a few times the simplification of existing processes. I'm sure that for the sake of end-to-end process efficiency, you had to redesign as many processes. And for the sake of the interoperability of the data silos, I'm sure. Have there any methods of artificial intelligence been applied and implemented to the redesign of processes for greater efficiency? Thank you.
Briefly, please.
Very briefly, most countries, while a bank knows the exact number of processes that it has, or a big firm or a big company, states typically don't. And states don't have a measure of the number of processes that are being voted and legislated on a daily basis. What we're trying to do right now is to find the denominator, because we know the numerator of the digital services, it's on GovGR, but we don't know the denominator. So we're currently trying to A, find the denominator. B, simplify and digitize at the same time. What have we done? To a certain extent we have simplified, but not always. Why? Because of COVID. Because at the end of the day we wanted to offer a digital alternative instead of visiting a public service. Can AI tools be deployed in process simplification? Yes, it's a classical case of business process reengineering. You can apply such tools in BPR processes, but of course because they, in our case, reflect real-time policy choices that touch upon the lives of millions, you need to have a human eye on top, as Michalis said. But we plan to do this. We plan to effectively create, I would say, a centralized process of mapping what's changing every day through legislation. And we plan to announce it this year with the quite appropriate Greek name of Mythos, thinking of Mythos Tsariadnis.
Excellent. Well, on that bombshell, I will draw things to a close. So please join me in thanking our panelists for this evening. Thank you. Thanks, gentlemen. I'd ask our panelists to stay with us up on the stage for the moment. We're going to move on to the award ceremony part of the evening. These are the Innovation and Technology Awards that we've created as a way. I mean, I think you've already heard that Greece has quite an edge. There's something going on here in terms of technology and innovation. And we wanted to recognize that and pick out the examples of excellence around the country. And to do that, I'm going to hand over to Ms. Baya Antonopoulou, who is going to be our awards presenter for the night. Ms. Antonopoulou, please come up and join us.
Καλησπέρα σε όλους σας.
Hello. This is the first year Beyond Innovation Awards are being confirmed. Actually, we envisioned this event in a different way, to be honest, but developments with the conflict in our neighborhood do not allow us to have this event in a much more happy ambience. But we're here to do it, but in every under every social and political circumstances, we have people, we have individuals and organizations that stand out by investing in technology, in innovation, and by contributing to the recovery of our economy and to the, let's say, return of our society to some normality, and that's why we're here to award them, to praise them for their contribution. The first award is being conferred to a politician of the digital era, the person who reformed and keeps on reforming an entire country by bringing new digital habits that each and every one of us may use without having any specific digital skill as a prerequisite. This is his legacy, a legacy for us and for the coming generations. And I'm talking about the Minister of Digital Governance, Mr. Kyriakos Pierakakis.
Το βραβείο θα απονείμει ο κύριος Μιχάλης Βλέτσας.
Mr. Bletsas will now present the award.
Εσωτερική
υπόθεση.
So it's an in-house issue.
Builder of tomorrow, Υπουργέ. Να είστε καλά.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Next award, Force of Change 2022. Its title will be conferred to the head of computing of the MIT Media Lab, who has decades-long experience on one of the most interesting scientific fields of this era. So the award is to Professor Michalis Bletsas.
Όχι. Και θα το απο...
And we would like to invite Mr. Yannis Bratakos, the head of the Industrial and Economic Chamber of Athens, and also the president of the jury of our awards for this year.
Δεν ξέρω αν θέλετε να πείτε.
Would you like to say a few words? Or you, dear Minister? I didn't give you the floor. The only thing I'd like to say is that this award is conferred to the hundreds of Greek engineers who spend night and day on systems like the one on the vaccination certificate. It's their legacy. It's the outcome of their numerous stories they may share with us for developing these systems. It belongs to them. Mr. Bletsas? Although this was no surprise to me, I was told yesterday. I have accepted this invitation many months ago. These awards are very important for me because throughout my career, Greece has always been more important than America.
Τα υπόλοιπα βραβεία που έχουν τον τίτλο Beyond.
Beyond Innovation Awards 2022. The next ones, the other ones will be conferred by Mr. Ross. We will excuse our panelists now. Thank you very much. Let's start with the National Bank of Greece. Innovative enough, during the pandemic, they were the first to offer a bank account opening online and online granting of loans. They invested heavily on the digital upgrade and by means of their e-banking platform facilitate the lives of many and offers a huge array of services to their customers. The award will be delivered to the CEO of National Bank of Greece, Mr. Paul Milonas.
My back just to annoy the photographers. There we are. You should hold that. Do you want to have some words?
No.
Yeah, go for it.
Ευχαριστούμε πάρα πολύ.
Firstly, it's a great honor. Thank you for that. We thank you, the people of the National Bank of Greece. Thank you for this award. It's the recognition of a project for the past 3 years. We have invested a lot of time and money in that. We have taken many first positions, but if you're a customer of the National Bank of Greece, you know what I'm talking about. And if you're not, today you can use your mobile phone and become one. Even if we're talking about a micro business or a small business. Figures are quite telling. More than 2 million digital customers, online customers, which means 1/3 of the Greek market. And we have 4,500,000 users, active users, which means 65% more than second place. So figures are quite telling. National Bank of Greece ranks first when it comes to digital banking. And the forecast. The previous speaker said that cyber is about tomorrow. 1 week ago, it became the present. We don't sleep at night. It's the first thing that comes into our mind before we go to bed and when we wake up, whether we're going to have a cyber attack. So the challenge for us, for all companies, is about the quality of the service we deliver to our customer and how we protect their businesses. There's no reply. It's an ongoing challenge, and we will deal with it. Thank you.
Το επόμενο βραβείο πηγαίνει σε μια εταιρεία η οποία προχώρησε τα τελευταία 2
Next award to an organization that moved on with a large-scale digitalization project focusing on digital interconnections in order to facilitate, to meet the requirements of the customers. They heavily strengthened and enhanced their IT infrastructure and the ICT infrastructures, and of course the multiple data load management. The load management of the organization. We're talking about the Public Power Corporation. Mr. Alexandros Paterakis will receive the award.
Καλησπέρα σε όλους. Βρίσκομαι εδώ με ιδιαίτερη περηφάνεια.
I'm really glad, I'm really honored to receive this award on behalf of the people of the PPC company, the PPC organization who, in the past 2 years, after the onset of the COVID pandemic, were called to play a very important role, to stand up to expectations and secure that this organization across the board, across the Greek territories, will be able to deliver despite difficulties. The difficulties we were very quickly faced with. We were able to have 0 functional and operational problems. We were able to materialize substantial changes in the way we do business, many of which might have already been, you might already see them. We have a specific digital profile, and following the pathway opened by the minister, we started digitizing our processes, offering new services and becoming more customer-centric, which some of you might not believe we could do in the past. As far as the basic infrastructures are concerned, there was a huge project delivered in order, to deliver remotely. We're talking about 20,000 employees in total. We have people working everywhere in our country. They had to work remotely, they had to work on the field, on site, and sometimes under very difficult and adverse circumstances. Being able to provide them with the necessary tools was extremely difficult. We have never done that in the past, and to a great extent, we have never used these technologies to some part. Currently, I can really say that in these 2 years, we were able to be one step before saying that our data centers may be locked and left to work, which means that we can fully operate in a cloud environment. Third, the most important thing, we keep on building on our people, the skills required in order to be able to stand before you and so the public face of our company is at the core of all the projects we have right now. So we substantially invest, we deeply invest in human resources so that they are skillful, they may acquire the skills needed, some of which are quite innovative. Some of the previous speakers mentioned that. So let me repeat what the minister said before. We need the will, the willingness, we need a great deal of preparation, and, as I said before, we have to rely on our people. And I'm pretty sure we will be able to deliver. Thank you very much for the honor. Thank you.
Στα πλαίσια των βραβείων
In the framework of innovation awards, capital product partners and the wider shipping group of capital has proceeded with the biggest shipping products, investing on state-of-the-art technologies in its fleet, alternative fuel, including natural gas, wind power, AI solutions, and cybersecurity, aiming at a sustainable shipping industry. That is why it is awarded today, and Mr. Kalogieratos is here to receive the award on behalf of Capital Product Partners. Good afternoon, everyone. It is a great honor for Capital Product Partners and the wider group of Capital to receive this award. You see, investing in new technologies and innovation is quite important. It's of existential nature, even for shipping. Shipping has a lot of challenges ahead. The first and most important one is transition to net zero, and the second, digitalization. We are convinced that new technologies and innovation is the answer to both these challenges, especially for transition to net zero, where contrary to other sectors of global industry, there is no visible technological path. We need to invest in new technologies in order to help R&D to find technological solutions that will bring us closer to our objective. We have invested in more than 40 ships with new state-of-the-art technologies in propulsion, wind power, connection of different ports in order to decrease demand in fossil fuel. But at the same time, we place emphasis on digitization of the operations of the office and the ship by developing cybersecurity strategies. We take advantage of the opportunities offered by machine learning and the new era of digitalization. With this award, you give us energy and you give us courage to go on. Thank you very much. The next award will go to a company which started the biggest investment of upgrading and modernization in telecommunications in Greece. It is OTE group of companies. Based on its investment program and the support of Deutsche Telekom, it invests 3 billion euros aiming at using optic fibers for 3 million households. Mr. Kostadinidis will receive the award, Head of Strategy of the organization. Good afternoon, everyone. Even you have already mentioned what I wanted to say. I would like to thank you all warmly on behalf of a group of companies for this award. Among the challenges we have been facing all these past 2 years, this award comes actually to confirm our options. We have managed to improve the daily life of our co-citizens, customers, support Greek companies to continue their operation under difficult circumstances. The group, OTE group of companies, as you know, is the biggest technology company in Greece. And understanding our task, we have been implementing an investment plan aiming at upgrading the digital infrastructure of our country, what we need as a country to proceed with digital transformation. We proceed with 5G and fiber optics, and quite recently we announced to the Prime Minister and the Minister of Digital Governance our intention to upgrade and increase our investments with more than 3 billion euros by 2027, aiming at cover 3 million households and businesses by bringing fiber optics beyond the networks with our services of telecommunications, ICT in general. We support digital transformation of the public and the private sector. And we play an important role in digital transition and transformation of economy and society. Before I rest my case, I would like to thank the organizers for this excellent organization and, of course, the excellent discussion we had earlier among our panelists. It's something that we have missed all this time. Thank you very much. The next award will be received by Aegean Airlines, the biggest Greek airlines, member of Star Alliance, and with the biggest network at home and abroad. It has received a lot of awards for its services, and in its DNA, its inclusion of technology and transformation of them for the benefit of its passengers. It brought internet during flights some weeks ago, and that is why we award it today, and Mr. Georgianis is here on behalf of Aegean to receive the award. Georgianis, με άκουσε Georgianis.
That's enough. Yeah, that'll do it.
Thank you very much for this award. In Aegean, well, we try to transform technology to services to the benefit of passengers and to facilitate our operation. It's been in our DNA for 20 years now, from our first e-ticket to Wi-Fi on plane. Technology is now available and is necessary in most of the cases, but not always there for innovation. In Aegean, we are clear that in order to translate technology into useful innovation is the quality, ethos, and skills of our people, cooperation, and focus on our objective, a culture that encourages, rewards constant improvement in all fields of our work. Either we talk about the airports or on our planes. Thank you very much for this award. I represent all my colleagues today here, and I would like to thank all my colleagues for their contribution and support all these past years. Thank you very much. The next company is Terna, the biggest concessionaire offering services
contributing to upgrading the services offered in highways. They upgrade tolls, posts, and itineraries. Ionian Road is the only national road where charging vehicles is feasible. And Konstantinos Labru, executive member of the board of directors and strategic decisions manager. Good afternoon. I would like to thank you on behalf of Terna Group for this award. I would like to thank The Economist and Power Game for this exceptional evening that brought two exceptional Greeks with us. This award belongs to the hundreds of employees that 24/7 are on the field trying to offer all services offering and the team of Nea Odos and Kedriki Odos introducing all these new services you just mentioned. Thank you very much.
Η Pharmaten.
Pharmaten is an innovative company in drugs, a global pioneer in complex injectable products, LAI, and at the same time it has a high rate of investments in innovation. It is awarded today. Mr. Georgios Dros, Vice President and Human Resources, will receive the award. Good afternoon, everyone. Exceptional honor for Pharmathen, which is among the most innovative companies in the country. We are a company of a European company with a lot of awards received in Greece and abroad all these past years. Our spearhead is research and development and production of pharmaceutical technology and products in Greece, in our venues in Greece, from Greek analysts and scientists. And at the same time, we export all our products and services abroad. For 53 years now, we have been faithful to our values, which are investments in research and development, innovation and openness. And I believe that this award actually is an award to our vision to improve the lives of people all over the world. This award will give us strength and courage to continue innovating in the future. On behalf of 1,200 employees, I would like to thank you very much.
Thank you. Εδώ ολοκληρώθηκαν οι βραβεία.
So this is the end of the event. At this very point, we'd like to thank Mr. Panos Rigas, our creative partner for the awards. He runs the EA Relate company, supporting us for the Support Innovation Awards. Mr. Rigas was the one who inspired and designed the awards. Thank you very, very much for your work. for the innovative design you produced. Thank you. Thank you. It was a beautiful project. I got inspired and I really had fun doing that. So, enjoy the rest of the evening. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, that is it. It's just left for me now to say thank you to our wonderful speakers tonight. Congratulations to all of the award winners for Beyond Innovation 2022, and let's look forward to see who's going to be a winner in 2023. Thank you, of course, to our interpreters who, as far as I can tell, are only there for my benefit, but without them, I'd be lost. And above all, of course, thanks to all of you for coming and joining in tonight. Please enjoy your meal. Thanks very much.